Hello there, this is Out Motorsports. My name is Jake and this is the 2020 Lexus LX 570. This is Lexus's largest SUV. It is not their most modern, however. So we are here today to talk about what this LX 570 is, how it fits in the Lexus lineup, and you'll notice over my shoulder how this thing is to tow. Yes, this is more of an off-road oriented vehicle, but it has a tow rating of 7,000 pounds. So as with anything that shows up with a 5,000 plus pound towing capacity, we're gonna find out how it is to actually pull something around. Now first, like I said, this is more of an off-road oriented SUV, and this is the biggest thing that Lexus will sell you. This is a 3-row vehicle. It is a standard 2-row with that 3rd row optional. Most buyers are gonna end up with the 3rd row. That will let you carry 7 people. Now that 3rd row does not fold flat into the floor, it folds up on the sides. That is to help with ground clearance and departure angle because it keeps that load floor much higher in the rear, and that speaks to this vehicle's off-road prowess. Now I keep talking about off-roading. Why is that? Well, since its inception for the 1995 model year, the Lexus LX has really just been a Toyota Land Cruiser with Lexus badges up front. So to understand where the LX 570 fits in the modern Lexus lineup, it's really important to understand where this LX came from in the first place. Knowing your roots is a really good thing no matter what you're talking about, doubly so in certain elements of automotive culture, and especially when it comes to the LX 570. Yes, this is Lexus's largest vehicle. Yes, it has 3 rows of seats, but it's really not meant to be a 3-row family hauler. It's marketed that way, they're selling it that way, but let's go back to where the LX was in the mid-1990s. If you remember the mid-1990s, the sport utility vehicle segment was booming. It was a craze that was sweeping the nation. Every automaker was trying to come up with something, if not multiple SUVs, to bring to market as quickly as they could. Now, Lexus was a younger brand. They had come out in 1989, and their first vehicle, the LS 400 sedan, was intended to take on the Mercedes-Benz S-Class. After that, they added the ES 250 to their lineup, which was really just a tarted up Camry that was intended to have a second vehicle in the showrooms beyond the big LS. Now, when SUVs started really taking off, Lexus said, well, we gotta add something, and the vehicle that they chose was the Toyota Land Cruiser. Think back to what Toyota was selling for SUVs at the time. They really just had the 4Runner and the Land Cruiser, and the Land Cruiser was bigger, more luxurious, and more capable. Why not start with that to build a luxury SUV? Now, the early LX was not really any different from the Toyota Land Cruiser. They added the Lexus badges, they added some leather seats, they did a few little things to make it more Lexus-y, but it wasn't that different. This LX, which is a 2020 model year, this is a brand new car, this is based on the 200-series Land Cruiser, which is the current Land Cruiser. Now, Toyota has not iterated on these trucks very frequently. These trucks are sold as military vehicles in many other parts of the world, and that's where they started in the first place in the 1950s. So this is the 200 series Land Cruiser platform, which first came out in the 2008 model year. Yes, this vehicle traces its roots more or less to 2008. Most vehicles will get 1 refresh, maybe 2 if they're sticking around a long time. The LX has received 3 refreshes, the last one in 2015. So in 2015, it got a new front and rear design, got an all-new interior, and really inside, it's a very nice vehicle. It's a nice place to spend time. There are a lot of controls and a lot of capability here that do remind you that if you really want to, this big Lexus is off-road capable. It's got a Torsen limited slip differential, full-time all-wheel drive with high and low range, and unlike the Toyota Land Cruiser counterpart, which has a fixed coil sprung suspension, this LX has AHC. That's what Lexus calls its adjustable height control. Now what that means, this is not an air suspension, this is hydraulic suspension. So there's these globe-looking spheres for the 4 corners of the suspension, and they use hydraulic fluid, much like old Citroens, much like some old Mercedes-Benzes, and they use the fluid to not only raise and lower the suspension, but load level the rear, and they can firm up or loosen just a little bit to change the ride quality. Unlike the Toyota Land Cruiser, which has that traditional coil-sprung suspension, this LX can tow 7,000 pounds according to Lexus. If you need to tow a little bit more, the Land Cruiser will tow another 1,100 pounds for a total of 8,100 pounds of rated weight. Now, do you want to tow that much weight with something like this? That's what we're gonna find out when we get behind the wheel. This does have a fairly short wheelbase. This is not as big as a Toyota Sequoia, which is in the Toyota family and is rated to pull a similar amount of weight, but with a 10-inch longer wheelbase. The Sequoia has about a 122-inch wheelbase. The Lexus LX has about 112, 113 inch wheelbase. And when you're pulling a longer trailer like this, the wheelbase is going to help you with stability. Something shorter or an open car trailer that's not as big of an aerodynamic demand on the vehicle, not going to be as big of a deal. Anyway, before we get into towing, let's talk a little bit more about the drivetrain that powers this LX 570. All right, so under the hood of this 2020 Lexus LX 570, you still have Toyota's venerable 5.7 liter naturally aspirated V8. They use it in some other products. It's tuned a little bit differently based on where it is, and in this LX 570, it's putting out 383 horsepower and about 403 pound-feet of torque. That is the same engine that you'll find in Land Cruiser. They make a little more power and torque here, more or less based on engine tune, and Lexus does require that you use premium fuel in this vehicle. All right, so first of all, this vehicle does have a tow hitch, but Lexus, like many other big SUV manufacturers, covers it for the sake of aesthetics, because most of the time with these vehicles, you're not gonna be towing with them. Now, vehicles like Ford's Expedition, these covers pop off pretty easily. You can just grab and pull, there's some tabs. Lexus actually asks that you get a flathead screwdriver and lay on the ground to remove the tow hitch cover from your $100,000 vehicle. So now I'm going to pull this off and we'll hook the trailer up. Having never done this, there's two little tabs. There we go. All right. That's something. Now I'm covered in gravel dust. Let's hook this thing up. All right, so this is by Tekonsha. This is a trailer brake controller. It's a little different from what you'd be used to. This is called the Prodigy RF. So if you have a couple different tow vehicles and you don't want to spend money on multiple brake controllers, or like me, you don't want to dig into some wiring that may or may not work right, or the vehicle doesn't belong to you, this is a really great solution. So this end plugs into your tow vehicle, and then right here, this is where your trailer cord will plug in. So just 7-pin under the tow vehicle. In the case of the LX, the plug is way under here. Well, it's in there. This is not a vehicle designed for towing very often. All right, so towing with the 2020 Lexus LX 570. Like I said, I've got this Prodigy RF trailer brake controller hooked up, and this is the controller for it. So I've got it just plugged into the 12-volt cigarette lighter plug by the cup holders, and it will use the service brakes and send a variable signal based on how hard I'm pushing them. And then you'll see here that number's going up. And then if I need to, I've also got this button here that will apply full trailer brakes. Two other things I've done for the sake of towing. This Lexus does not have a tow mode, which is kind of a bummer, but regardless, it's got a sport mode. And like I said, the suspension is primarily intended to be adjustable for height, but it does have adjustable damping. So you can make it a little looser, a little tighter, depending on what you're looking to do. No one is going to consider this LX 570 sporty, but it has a sport mode and a sport plus mode. And I was told by people on the internet, and the internet is of course never wrong, to use sport mode because that will stiffen the suspension up, help a little bit with body control. So we're going to start it off in sport, see how it goes. And then I've also got the transmission in sport mode as well. Like I said, there's no tow mode, but sport mode will hold the gears a little bit longer between gear changes, maybe be a little more aggressive on the downshifts to help with engine braking. You do also have a manual shift mode once you're in sport, and there are paddles on the steering wheel. So you do have the ability to control everything in a way that suits you. Go ahead and turn out and give it the beans. Like I said, 383 horsepower, 403 pound-feet of torque. Ooh, here's 50. Here's 60. It is, it's not fast. Like I said, this is a 5,800 pound SUV plus the trailer on the back. We're close to that maximum trailer weight that Lexus rates of 7,000 pounds. Now my big concern here was with chassis stability because, like I said, the wheelbase on this is short, it's 112 inches, and I owned a short wheelbase tow vehicle. I owned an L322 Range Rover, which was a 2010 model year. They made those for a handful of years, and they were the exact same wheelbase. They were 112 inches, and the suspension on those did not firm up at all. It was just whatever they had it set to. It was a four-corner air suspension, and it was pretty soft, and it towed my trailer that is currently hooked up to this Lexus so poorly that I sold it as soon as I towed this trailer a couple times. I owned the Range Rover, towed the trailer a few times, and I said, this is so bad, I'm getting rid of the truck to buy a half-ton pickup truck, which is what I did. It is a little bit of a windy day today. Yesterday was worse in the Northern Virginia area, but the weather is turning. We've got a little bit of a cold front, and there is some wind going on. Everything feels pretty stable. We're going 60 right now, and you know, there's no gusts to try and push me around. There's also no tractor trailers to help push me around. Those are really the two big concerns I have with a short wheelbase tow vehicle like this. But stability-wise, feels pretty good. So on the whole, I think first impression-wise, this tows well enough. Would I personally buy something this sized to tow my trailer with full-time as a tow vehicle? I don't know. I really would want to drive it on a windier day or with a bunch of 18-wheelers around to really see how this suspension and chassis overall handled that side-to-side motion. I think you would get some sway, even just a little bit, and you know, it comes down to how often you're towing and how much weight you're towing. If you're going to be towing an open car trailer that's more like what you'd rent from U-Haul, I think that would be just fine. Your weight is not so much of a concern. Those trailers weigh 1,800 to 2,000 pounds plus whatever you put on them. But you don't have the aerodynamic demands. With the enclosed trailers, they're so tall, they're a big sail in the wind, and you really have to have a chassis that can keep them stable. Now, even with the wind here now, I'm feeling just a little bit of movement. It's not bad, it's not scary. I'm not having to do anything with the LX 570 to keep it in line, but what I'm feeling now may not be felt as much in even a half-ton truck like Toyota's Tundra, for example. I think if you're looking to pull something very occasionally, say you've got a trailer or a boat that you need to move once a year, twice a year, sure, this will do it, and it'll be a little more manageable size. It's going to be smaller than a Sequoia, smaller than a Tahoe, but if you're looking for something that's really going to be suited to towing, even just looking at the gymnastics of what I had to go through to expose the trailer hitch to the world to hook this thing up, and where the plug is for the trailer lights and all of that sort of stuff, this can tow in a pinch. This is not meant to tow frequently. All right, and that is it for this review of the 2020 Lexus LX 570 and how it is to tow with. Thank you so much for coming along today. We've really enjoyed putting this one together. As always, if you like what we're up to, please take a second, like this video, and subscribe to the channel. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and a full written review of this LX 570 will be available at outmotorsports.com and linked in the description below. Thank you so much for joining us, and until next time, please drive safe and be well. We'll see you soon.